Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. By the way, pro tip, there's the business lounge in the front. You can come and join me here. Um, so we're going to talk about irrational product calls. We're always encouraged to fail in this conference and in life in general, and to learn from our failures. What I'm going to suggest is that some of the failures could be overcome by simple methodologies, and then you can fail at smarter things rather than fail at the stupid things. So I'm going to try to show you a framework around that. A little bit about myself. I see myself as a hacker, entrepreneur. So when my kids wake me up in the middle of the night, I code. That's how I define myself. I used to work in developer relations in Microsoft and also in Google up until 2 weeks ago. And now I'm a proud member of Slack, running their developer relations. This is my Twitter handler. I'll be happy to talk to you there. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about how do we experience products. And I'm going to show you the way I look at it, which is a little bit different. Then we'll talk about common mistakes we make. Not you. Other bad program managers do that. And then we'll talk about solutions and way to solve that. So how do we experience products? And I think the way we experience products is through through conversation. I would stipulate that we had a way of communicating between each other called speech or talk way before we tweeted at each other. Way before we liked each other's posts, right? So for hundreds of years and millions of years, we've been talking to each other without apps. So at the basic level, we're actually having a conversation with our application, with our product. We're having this small conversation in our mind, right? So us as product managers, we could use this conversation to validate our product, to see if our product makes sense. Okay? And this is based on work I've been doing with a lot of startups around the world, being part of the Google Developer Relations team. So I'll show you a little bit of examples from what we did. But this is the underlying assumption. This will be at the test at the end of my presentation. Okay? If you remember this, you can go and have coffee now. So let's talk about common fuck-ups. And we'll start with an experiment. Who wants to come on stage? There's a prize. You want to come on stage? Yep, okay. Thank you. Let's welcome him. Woo. Hi, I'm Amir.
I'm Ajo.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Ajo.
Nice to meet you. So I'm going to be the product. You're going to be the user, OK? Hi, how are you?
Fine. How are you?
Great. I have a great service to give you. But before we start, I want your username and password for Facebook.
OK, let me think about that. OK, yeah, sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Really? And $100 too? So, OK, tell me, what is your password for Facebook? OK, thank you very much. And I actually brought you Slack-branded candy.
Oh.
So thank you. Thank you very much. So you saw what I mean? That was a conversation between a product and a user. And yet, wow, you see myself. OK. And yet, this was irrational, right? You saw that asking him for a username and password without giving him any value was totally irrational. But yet we do that all the time. We used to call it in Google the wall of login. And you see a big bounce rate, usually, when you look at your analytics, when you look at your data. You see a big bounce rate at that page because the user doesn't know what he's getting. In the same way, we have a conversation, we have negotiation for millions of years. And we know that there's a give and take. Why am I giving such a big thing without knowing what I'm getting? So there's simple ways, even just showing a wizard about what the app is about remove that wall of logging by an order of magnitude. If you tell the user what he's getting, especially when it's a new product, when it's a lean product, when it's not like, I don't know, Facebook, Twitter, or something that is really known, if the user doesn't know about your product, asking him to give something very valuable without telling him what you're getting back is irrational. Okay, so conversations like this really solve that problem. Okay, now a test. This is not the test I was talking at the end of the conversation. This is a test for you. So I've been working with a company here in the Valley, and they help you take photos of artwork of your kids and show them and share them with your family. And they tested two onboarding processes. Okay, the first onboarding process is you register, you run through an intro, and then you get to a feed of photos, okay? The second flow, you register, and then you go through the intro, and then you have to invite a friend or a member of the family, and then you have to upload an image, okay? You're not asked, you can't go into the app without actually going through that flow. So which flow was more effective for the startup? Who votes for 1? Okay, who votes for 2? Okay, I see very few people vote for 2. And they are right. Flow 2 was much, much more effective. Why? Because it all connects to what are you measuring? What do you want to achieve? So flow 1 was very, very effective in getting people through the flow. Most of the people started the flow, went through the intro, and went to the feed, but never came back to the app, right? The second flow was very good for retention and usability, because think of it. You go in, you register, you go into the intro, and then you invite a friend. You actually help virality at this stage, right? Because that friend or that family member now needs to download the app. And then you have to upload the photo. That friend actually gets that photo back. So you create a hook for him to say, hey, that's an amazing artwork. And then when they get that, you get a hook, because you get a message that says, hey, your friend just saw that and now has a reaction. So for actually retention, the second flow was much better. And again, if you do this conversation, if you talk to people, you'll see that they're much more inclined to do a lot in the beginning just to get to know you. And this is the point I'm making. People will do a lot of work if they see the fruit of their work. You see? I'll let you enjoy this slide, which I found on open source. So once people will do a lot of work if they know what's in it for them. There was a mentor that I work with. He said everybody should be tuned to WIFM, WII.FM. What's in it for me? Okay, and if you manage to understand that, then your product will probably be successful. Okay, so solutions. We talked about problems and how do people fuck up. Let's talk a little bit about solutions. The first thing is just what I told you. Talk your app. So get a friend, get him a beer or coffee, and just do the conversation. Do the conversation. It looks strange at the beginning, but I do it all the time. I actually, and I'll show you an example in a minute, I actually talk my product, okay? You'll see that there's a lot of, once you build this conversational interface, you'll see that you'll be able to do much more of a rational product calls. Then, just like Tomer said, observe behavior, not what people say. Look at what they do. So now I'll give you an example. I've been working with a startup in London, and they produce games for kids between the age of 3 and 10. And the game was a tablet game, and you had to move a ball through a maze from one corner to the other corner. Sounds simple, right? So we said, OK, let's bring kids to test this. And they said, no, you don't need testing. I said, let's please bring kids to test this. So we brought kids of Googlers, we used to, at Google, you call yourself Googler. So we got kids of Googlers to come and test this. And this is what the kids did, okay? I'm going to try to be a 3-year-old. So they look at the tablet. They smile because now their parents allow them to play on tablet, which is rare, right? And then they look at the tablet, and they start poking the tablet. Poking the tablet, poking the tablet. And then they start being irritated. And then they take the tablet and throw it away. And we lost one of the tablets that day. True story. So we looked at this and we asked the kids, why were you so mad? They said the balloons didn't move. So we looked at the app, and the background of the maze were balloons. Now, what do kids do when they see something on a tablet? It interacts with their finger, right? They know how these things work. So they see balloons, and they say, hey, great, I can punch the balloons. So they start punching the balloons, but the balloons don't move, right? So they become angry, and then they say, this is broken, and throw this. We changed the background to clear blue background, and the kids came back, and they, hey, there's a ball, and they start moving the ball through the maze. And if your engineer tells you that it takes you more than an hour to replace the background image of an app, you should probably fire him, okay? This small change is critical. Don't think big features. Think data and think small changes. And I'll give you another example. So data, that's my last point. Be very, very data focused. So here's a personal story about myself. This is me 10 years ago and probably 10 pounds ago. I don't know. I went to study meditation in Nepal for about 10 days. I wasn't allowed to talk. I was only allowed to meditate and contemplate. And I recommend that to you. It helps a lot with clarity. When I came back to the real world, I found out that meditation doesn't work here. You get your meditation, you get into a good place, and then somebody cuts you on the road. That's it. You can't get into the zone. So I said, I'm a geek, right? So what did I do? I created an app to help other people meditate. So this is my app. I'm sorry, I designed it. Okay. I'll walk you through the complex flow. This is the first page. You press the button, you get into the second page. You get a sentence, a nice sentence to think about. You get a timer. There's a feature I added to put the phone in flight mode, so while you're meditating, your boss doesn't call you. And there's a gong and a timer. That's it. That is the app. I released it before I joined Google, and I thought I'm going to get 7 users. Where I come from, if you help 7 people, your place in heaven is secure. So that was the intention here. And I got 10,000 users at the first month. I was shocked. And I wanted data because I'm a geek. So I installed Google Analytics. And when I say Google Analytics, you can choose any analytics you like. But this is really useful because it shows you the funnel. How many of you heard about the funnel? OK, good, everybody, yeah. And the funnel is what the user goes through the app. So let's look a little bit about the data. You see where people are coming from. This is useful if you see a lot of countries where English is not the first language, so you might want to translate. But let's look actually at the funnel. So people go into the app, but never start meditation. Why is that? Can we go back to the one slide? Can we go? I have only forward. I'll do the voice of God. Can we go back one slide? Yes. OK. So why do people go into this page and never start the meditation? Any ideas? So I talked to a friend of mine, Dr. Greenspan, and I asked him, why are people not starting the meditation? He said, OK, talk to me. What do you want me to do? I said, OK, you go into the first page, and you click the button. And he says, what button? Now, I'm an engineer. I know this is a button. I define the on-click of that button, right? It's 100% a button. But users didn't know it's a button. And again, small changes. I changed this. I bought a button on Fiverr, and I changed this for $5, and I changed it, and I saw about 70% improvement in that in that parameter. And if your developer tells you it takes him more than 5 minutes to replace that button, you should probably fire him, okay? But this, if you look at the data, if you're data focused, you'll see that this is not the biggest deal, right? So it's 50% people drop off at the entry, but about 75% actually never finish the meditation. So why aren't people finishing the meditation? Any ideas? Okay, so I go back to my friend and I say, hey, why aren't people finishing the meditation? And he says, okay, talk to me. What do you want me to do? Okay, he said, you start with 40 minutes of meditation, and every time you meditate, you start with an additional 5 minutes. He said, 40 minutes? You started with 40 minutes? That's crazy. I said, why? For me, as a professional meditator, this is the time that is needed to get into the zone. He said, okay, let's take you into another place. If you would go to the gym, I said, I don't go to the gym. He said, imagine that you go to the gym. Would you start with 4 pounds or with 40 pounds? I said, I'd probably start with 4 pounds. So I said, do that to your users. Have the same conversation we're having right now, be kind to your users, right? And I changed the variable from 40 minutes to 4 minutes. And if your engineer tells you it takes him more than a minute to change that variable, you should probably fire him, okay? But changing that variable made all the difference, because people were enlightened in 4 minutes. They felt so happy that they blogged about it. They tweeted about it. They gave me amazing reviews on the marketplace. They got other people. They say, oh, this app changed my life in 4 minutes. Now, did it really change their life in 4 minutes? For me, as a professional meditator, that's impossible, but for them, it did that, right? So that was an assumption on my part. So small changes, think about small changes, and be very data focused. I want to show you my last point for this talk. So this is what we talked about. Talk about your app, observe behavior, and be very data focused. The last point is not related to Lean Startup. It's related to my experience as an entrepreneur. So I created a course in Udacity. This is the link to that course. It's case sensitive, so if you, it's a capital T. And as you can see, English is not my first language, so that I fucked up many, many times doing this course. So I want to show you a short video about it.
Hi, and welcome to the course. This course will be the fourth course of a series of courses.
Four scores and 7 years ago.
From the top.
Okay, excited.
Students learning.
Yay.
We hope you can use them as a framework to build a business of your own.
Because that's it, I killed the entire flow. Oh.
A little.
We'll talk about with several startups who have done just that. Let's hear from them now, and let's do it again. Okay. So we'll talk to several startups.
Hey, we're going to talk to several startups?
Yeah.
Startups?
Who's talking to them?
Startups?
Am I talking to them? I didn't know that. Am I getting paid for that? Okay.
Woohoo! Ah!
I wasn't talking about what you've done.
Let's introduce ourselves.
Okay.
A little bit more
Okay.
excitement. Validation.
Validation.
Yeah.
It's like it's insane.
And
In this lesson, you learned about
Is it too
Okay.
fast?
No, it's okay.
It's great.
Okay, my mind is too slow. Sorry.
You learn to target your users. Target them.
Yes, it's good that I'm failing in the beginning. Yeah, okay.
Go! Go! Okay, we got it. I just had to punch some glass.
That's true. I'll do it.
User experience components. I dropped my phone. God damn it.
okay.
You've done some idea.
So,
Okay.
I teach myself to look at this, although this is very embarrassing for me every time I do this. So the key point is fail with grace, okay? Look at yourself failing and smile. The biggest mistake I see entrepreneurs do is go home and take the frustration of failure on their family, on their spouses, on their kids. So fail and smile while doing it. Thank you very much. I'll take questions now. Any questions? We're going to stand here awkwardly until you come up with a question. Yeah.
Sure. So I work at a nonprofit organization, and we're about to launch some online learning courses. And some of the pressure that I feel from our executive team is the need to make a lot of money right away. Even
Okay.
though we have just a few courses. What would be your recommendation on kind of having that conversation about the long term, or just in your experience?
So they want to capitalize on the money right now.
Yeah, they're very, instead of learning, which is really kind of what the Lean Startup embraces,
Yeah.
the goal of early experiments, they're interested in generating revenue. So how do I talk to them about
So one way is to get them to fail in generating revenue, because that's probably going to happen in the beginning. So if you can't change their minds, actually getting them to fail to create revenue would probably be a very smart thing to do, because then they'll say, okay, this has failed, let's now try to do other things. But this is an organizational question. I think that you want to say that you want to reach product market fit, and these are the agreed numbers that you want to see, so that they could capitalize on it and maybe show them that they could create much more money, a lot more money, if they actually follow that plan. So I think that's the way I do it. So either let them fail, or convince them that this is the right move. Yep.
Hi, so when you made the change on the app from the 40 minutes to the 4 minutes, how did you alert your users? Did they just see it and all of a sudden get excited about the change, or what did you tweet or announce to get the excitement going?
That's a very good question. So I did nothing. And the key is that your current users, if there's a small number of users, you don't need to communicate to them if you're doing a small change. If you're doing experiments, communicating the experiments could be counterproductive. Okay? What I saw was very simple, and I didn't have any means to reach my users. So what I saw is I changed the variable, I went to sleep, I woke up, and I saw a spike in analytics. So right now in developer relations, I do a lot things differently. So when I change something like APIs, I try to be very transparent. But when you do small changes in user experience, it happens all the time. Facebook, Google, they do hundreds of experiments every day, right? They don't announce anything. Experiments, I think, it's counterproductive to announce the experiment. You just change and see what happens. That's the magic. More awkward silence. Yep, question, yep.
Thanks. Would you talk a little bit more about what it means to talk your app in that bar setting that you were talking about?
Okay. So it first involved with finding a good bar, which is sometimes hard, and getting good beer or wine. And then just asking and finding the right friend, right? Sometimes the friend is a little bit is not the right friend. Sometimes asking your mother if this is a good idea, you always get, of course, it's a good idea. So finding someone who's willing to is the type, right, of the users that you're looking for. And then actually saying, hey, listen, we're going to do an experiment. I haven't built the app yet, but I want to talk to you as if I'm giving you this service, and then see how you interact. And you learn a lot from it, right? Let's take Slack, for example, right? I'll say, hey, we'll talk about the feature of creating a new channel. And they say, hey, how are you? Would you like to add a new channel? You'll probably ask me, if you don't know Slack, so what is this channel you're talking about? So maybe that gives me a clue that in the create a channel page, I probably need to say, hey, a channel is a topic that is associated with a certain conversation, right? So this gives me, once you do this conversation, you'll get answers, you'll get questions surfaced, and you'll get pushbacks, right? You'll say, hey, now give me all this information. And usually you'll have a form. We're unbelievably cruel with forms, right? We have tons of forms with tons of inputs in them, right? If you turn this into a conversation, you see how awkward that is. Okay, so what is your age, and what is your gender, and what is this? And you'll see that this conversation becomes something that you don't want to have, right? So why would you like to have it in the app? So this is the type, I think that if you do that, you'll learn a lot about doing proper product. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but is that different from in the start, the two user flows? One was more work and it got a better user?
So I would suggest in the two flows that you would go and say, hey, listen. So let's do the flows, and the long flow. Hi, let's take a photo of your artwork. I think people will be delighted. They say, yes, that's actually a very good idea. I love my kids, and they start talking about their kids. And once they start talking about their kids, you'll see that maybe adding comments makes a lot of sense, because you took the artwork, but you saw that people have a lot to say about the artwork. So it implies that feature. And then they say, OK, let's share it with a friend. And they say, OK, but maybe I want to share it to 2 or 4, right? And then you'll learn more about that product. I think that if you'll go through the flow, the same flow, and just saying, hey, this is an app, and now here's the feed. And now there's like an awkward silence because the conversation has ended, right? But if you take them through the flow of the product, you'll see that this is a much easier conversation to have. If you feel awkward in the conversation, you'll know that the product is not probably fine-tuned. If the conversation flows and it's fun, then it's great. Like, think of Instagram. Like, hey, just look at this picture. Hey, look at this picture. It's fun to talk like that. OK, yeah. Thank you.
So once you have, here.
Yeah.
Once you have your critical mass of 500,000, or in your case, 10,000 people, then it's easy, as you said, just make a change and do the experimentation. But what is your suggestion to get that initial critical mass of people to experiment on? What type of channels you publish about your new app?
So at least in mobile apps, you can source users without publishing your app itself. In Android, I don't know how you do it in iOS. But in Android, you can share a link, and only people who have that link could go and download that app. So it's like a private beta. So you would start with friends and friends of friends, or you would spend money on any user acquisition and buy a certain amount of users, and then talk to them. You could also use community and ask them to perform certain tasks. But getting that seed is very important, getting the right amount of users to get the proper data so that people don't skew your data is important, in my opinion. Yep, there was a question there. Blue scarf, sorry.
OK, great. I was curious about, you were talking about how forms, it's kind of awkward, and so you have the, hi, what's your name? And what's your gender? And what's your social? And all these things. And so do you have any suggestions about how to do forms well?
Do less forms.
If that's not possible.
For example, I would say that delegated authentication is much better than asking for a username and password. So if they're already registered and provide them a way to not give you the information in the form, but defer to other means of filling the form, right? So if they have filling their username and password again and again is much harder than just clicking login with Twitter, for example. There's other ways of asking the questions only when they're needed, right? So I'll give you an example from Instagram. So you go into Instagram, you take a photo, and you put the filter in, and you're all excited, and then it asks you whether you want to share it also on Twitter and Facebook, right? You remember that screen? And only then it asks you for the credentials. So you can ask for data only when there's like a burning need for that data. So I think that's another easy way. And I think their conversion there is very, very good because you have a lot of intent to actually share. So you're much more inclined to feel the data.
Here.
Yep.
We have a pretty complex design app, so it's you could think of something like Photoshop. There's a lot of options, a lot of clutter. What would you suggest? How do you get users to try out stuff? How do you, meaning there's no one starting point like you had here.
So I would say that you should probably move it to something which is much simpler and remove some of the stuff. In Google, there was a PM that told me that if you move things to default, that's where features go to die. So you can move things, you can change the defaults and move things to configuration and like the places where the graveyards of features. I would start by moving a lot of things there and see if people complain, right? Another thing is look at the data. What we saw in Google is that some of the links in our menus were not used as much. So you'll see what people are using your app for and what people are not using your app for. And if you want to promote things, make them more prominent, right? There was a study here in California about food for kids, and they showed that if they put apples in front of the burgers, kids actually took the apples, right? So if you show a user something, they will actually more be inclined to actually use it. So you can play with a lot of choosing your menus right and picking your menus right and simplify things. Be very ruthless with features. Features are a nightmare for users.
That's all the time we have. Thank you
very
so much, Amir.